Hello, friends. Today I am talking about me. It's really awkward. We were like trying to pilot test this before we got started, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is not the infrastructure we usually work with, but I found it really important to kind of have a pause at this stage in my podcast development and really letting everybody know about why I decided to start this and why I continue to think it's important. And I have Darcy here, as always, to kind of ask some burning questions about it, and one of my best friends, Christine, who is a skeptic with all this. So I'm actually really grateful she's on. And I know she's got a lot of curious questions about it as well. So thank you both for being here. Before I get going, do you have anything you want to say, Darcy?
Yeah, so the Creative Healing Podcast has been alive all of this year. And if you're listening to this right when this is being made public, it's 2025. If you're listening to this in the future, hello. We've been preparing this with love to be listened to anytime and really add value anytime. Um, so the this episode happening is something I've been really excited about, and I've been waiting for it since the intro episode. So the follow up, I know that anyone listening now, whenever you're listening, is going to gain a lot of value from hearing about how the Creative Healing Podcast really came to be and what inspired it, and also how it's grown over time, because there have been so many iterations already in the 9+ months, coming up on a year. So I'm honored to be here. I learn so much every week from the guests that show up, and day to day from you, Michelle. So
Awesome. All right. Well, I guess I'll dive into what got me going and even wanting to do this. And it started back in 2022, the end of 2022. I started emotionally spiraling for a lot of reasons. One of them was my husband was moving to Japan, and I was going to be single mama of three, running a business, and it just caused a spiral of emotional dysregulation. And my typical go to has always been therapy. And I was finding that therapy was not enough anymore. And it caused me to spiral into like a whole seeking out of resources, of spiritual seeking, of all different types of things. And it led me to a whole slew of different resources. And so personally, I started exploring, and then I got even more curious because I knew I couldn't be alone, and realized as I was working with clients that there are a population of people where therapy can only take you so far. And I say therapy, but I also mean coaching. I also mean residential treatment. I also mean outpatient clinical support at centers, that sometimes it's not enough. I hear people often talk about even, going to a psychiatrist, just taking medication isn't enough either, And so when I started going into this seeking out and trying out all these resources, I realized that very much like in the medical world, where I will find reputable resources for my clients, let alone my family, I needed to flush through this too. Like there's good healers and bad healers all over the world, just like there's good therapists and bad therapists. And so I was flushing through finding really reputable people for myself and potentially for clients down the road. And it was so much fun. And I was finding more peace in the process of my work that I was needing to do for myself. And I think what holistic healing, I call it creative healers. What it's been doing for me is that I'm able to connect different dots than I have with some of the traditional models that I've been using, particularly therapy. And so what happened when I started going to some of these healers, like psychics and mediums and Reiki healers. Reiki has really spoken to me in particular. Um, Medical Qigong support, that I was able to connect more dots. And when I did go back to therapy, it like accelerated times three. And I was able to kind of better understand myself and find more emotional regulation tools and calming in my system. And a deeper level of spiritual connection to what I understand for myself. And I think sometimes there's confusion that I have found in the community that if you work with a creative healer, then it's like a religion of some sort, and it's not. It supports whatever faith-based background you might have, but it uses a modality to support you to connect to what you want to connect with. So I found that like really powerful for me too.
I like your visual, Michelle, of connecting the dots,
Mhm.
um, or the similar analogy of having many doors, like Alice in Wonderland. And therapy may walk you through one door, but it doesn't get you through all of the doors available to you.
Yes.
And so that's like your mantra or theory of being able to connect a bunch of modalities to figure out what may work for an individual, and taking bits and pieces like a great recipe.
Mhm.
um, that resonates with me.
Well, and what you're speaking to as well, and Darcy knows this, I've always been about collaboration when coming up with treatment plans, or when we are working with coaching clients, we don't ever stand alone. And
Mhm.
so I think it's really important that when people decide to work with a creative healer, that it is a collaborative process. It's not like in lieu of therapy, in lieu of psychiatry, in lieu of medical support. It's an adjunct, you know. And so I find that really powerful
Mhm.
as well, because I think anytime you put one thing and think it's all or nothing, it's all going to tumble anyway. So
Mhm.
so yeah, I think it's been really nourishing, and I've been, for clients that have coaching clients that have been open, I've made some suggestions when they've asked, and I have not had any negative feedback, up until this point. And also, I'm also not saying it's for everybody. I'm not like, oh, everybody must go see a creative healer. I just think if there's certain symptoms that you're having and you are finding that some of the traditional models aren't working, why not?
Mhm.
I think there's more suffering now than there ever has been, for a lot of different reasons that I've seen from, like, cross culturally, and then of course people just have their own individual traumas from their own childhood wounds. And so
Mhm.
I think getting more creative in our healing plans can be very powerful for people, and it creates a beautiful ripple, like, because if I'm calmer, then the people around me are calmer, and then it creates more ripple, beyond that. So
One thing
yeah.
I've noticed so much in you, Michelle, and this predates the Creative Healing podcast by many years, is the quality of leadership that you have and wanting to, embody what you're sharing, and the integrity piece. And, with Hirschman Clinical Services, that's one reason I was initially so drawn to be part of this team and continue through so many different, iterations of the company, of myself, of the field, because there is that emphasis on, like, embodying and practicing what we share and what we're modeling. And there's no perfect, because there's no perfect. And it's about, exploring resources and having that vulnerability and professionalism at the same time. And that's definitely called me forward. And hearing about different ways to approach, uh, you know, problem solving, creative solutions. I like the creative solutions because when I think of a problem that needs to be solved, it turns, my brain can get very rigid, and that can create more anxiety. And I know I'm not alone there. I see it mirrored in clients and colleagues. So with this, uh, having, like Christine, what you said about Alice in Wonderland, like a different set of doors reveal themselves. Um, they're really all aimed to lead to the same place. And sometimes one door is going to seem completely inaccessible. It's too far away, it's too heavy because of past experience or whatnot. And this really brings a fresh lens and a revitalized opportunity to engage healing and engage life. And maybe from a little bit more of a fun place also. Can be a fun process too. Like anyone who's on video gets to see Michelle's background. She's got this magical forest background, and the details matter. Some of the other things going on, the events, there's a sparkle element. There's really this groundedness and love. Like we get to bring fun into the details too. And that's something that has been just a delight to be part of with Creative Healing Podcast. And what it represents is that these are people coming together with real life experience and gifts to share. And the more we're shining and sharing, the more people do get to benefit.
Thank you, Darcy. I think the other element that you're kind of going, that I'm also being reminded to speak about, is the community aspect of creative healers. I have found in the medical world, we, abide by HIPAA, and there's a lot of kind of infrastructure to support confidentiality and things like that. I think in the creative healing world, there is some of that, even though it's not mandated. We don't lose license, psychic doesn't lose their licensure. But what does evolve, because it's just set up differently, is there's more community. So community groups, and people supporting one another and inviting. So even though you might be having some individual sessions, some of these healers create these community groups to enter. Some of them might have small fees. Some of them might be donation only, because everybody needs to eat and support themselves. But I've really appreciated that aspect of the creative healing world. And I think that can be really beneficial to people that are feeling really lonely. So beyond just individual sessions, there's these group supports. And I'm not talking about group therapy. It's a different level of support where it's just a bunch of people coming together that want to love and support each other in whatever arena that they're, wherever they're at. And it doesn't have to go deeper than that. So once again, not in lieu of group therapy, just different, where, you have something that you can insert into your life where you just don't feel so alone. Because I think sometimes the biggest challenge that I think everybody has is, I'm the only one that's feeling this way. Everybody's doing better than I am, like from a very primitive level where it's like, no, we all got our stuff, and it's nice to, and we're all getting our stuff at different times and intervals, that's the good news. We're not always, falling apart at the same time, so that we can actually support each other at different times, So that's been really, I think, beautifully helpful.
And that, Michelle, it addresses one of the little bit of skeptical sides that I have. And thank you for inviting me on, by the way. And I'm just so proud of you. And as you reflect now a year's worth of podcasts, it's great to see you go back to your roots and articulate the why of the podcast. And as you said, like, it doesn't replace group therapy. And I think one of the questions that I had initially was, is there a risk that your listeners might mistake your podcast for therapy. And how do you address that? And you did partially, you address that as a forethought to you're doing the podcast, but could you just expand upon that a little bit?
Yeah, no, that's a very valid point. I've had some colleagues that went to go see a psychic and they stopped seeing a therapist. And I'm like, what are you doing? And it can really create a spiral when you do anything in excess. Like if you do too much therapy, like, I mean, eat too many bananas, there's like a backfire and everything. And that's where the psychics that if it was appropriate for someone to see someone like that, you want to find somebody that actually has boundaries. So the ones that I've worked with, they actually have boundaries. They'll be like, no, I'm not seeing you again. It's not appropriate and it's not going to be helpful or useful. There are infrastructures within each modality of creative healing that each person has. So I've really appreciated that part. And I always encourage if somebody wants to go work with somebody to really, I'm happy to, answer, provide questions to ask, just like I would. I have like a whole slew of questions to ask a therapist or a residential treatment center or a psychiatrist, because it's important to make sure these people are reputable. But yes, I have always reiterated that I just feel like more rather than less. And it could be, I've had some people utilize some of these, they'll stop therapy for like a month so that they can go, especially because financially everybody's in different places, and like being able to utilize all these supports at once can become very costly. What I have noticed is that creative healer costs are far less than some of the medical supports. Unfortunately, you can't get insurance to pay for any of these yet, except for like some of the realms, like functional medicine doctors that I've interviewed, acupuncturists, things like that. Maybe over time we'll get there. So they really do slide their fee and have donation only when necessary, because they know that they're out to help people. And so they're willing to kind of work with people where they're at, because they have to charge private pay because insurance. But anything in excess is never good. And thinking in the mindset of choosing medical versus creative healing, that's really where my passion is, which is why are we not collaborating and partnering versus separating or eliminating, and getting more curious with each other. And there's no threats, like nobody's going away and we need it all.
So out of curiosity, which part of you is asking yourself, why am I doing this? Is it the woman in you, the entrepreneur in you, or the clinician, the therapist?
It would probably be the licensed clinical social worker, because I've been so downloaded in the medical world for so long. And there's nothing in my schooling, in my education, that ever opened up the door to anything unless it was scientifically based. And I think what has caused this exploration was that the scientifically based resources aren't working either. Definitely not for me, and definitely not for my clients. So I don't care how much research is out there. I just have my own research because I'm dealing with people, so they're letting me know. They're not lying. They're not, it's like, I'm also not saying that there isn't supports out there that are really working. I love DBT. I love dialectical behavioral therapy. I love cognitive behavioral therapy. I love EMDR. Like there's more research on that. There's just so many great supports out there. And there's all these other creative healing supports that are really being underutilized. And we have no idea like the outcomes, because there's no research is being done on that. So I think that's probably where my questions have been for myself. And I am doing more exploratory around this. And there are more medical professionals that are scratching their heads and they're beginning to do more research on this, especially energy healing and with medical issues, these autoimmune problems that are coming up, and these complex clusters of medical symptoms that are happening that they can't seem to explain. But, then people are uprooting and finding energy healers and these other modalities, and all of a sudden they're cured, those kind of things. I think there's going to be more and more over time. And that's like another podcast. You guys can go listen to that. I'm not going to be hitting that. I'm just going to flush through the best creative healing resources I can get and, get the information out and say, hey guys, if you're curious, like these are really good resources and try them out. That's kind of really, where I'm at with, and hopefully my colleagues are listening and potential clients and, anybody in the public that has some curiosity.
Bringing in almost like a shortcut, one-stop shop. There's a lot of intrigue in that also, at being able to connect with one community and have access to dozens, if not more, more communities, people, practitioners, possibilities. There's so much information available, and accessing it and then applying it and integrating it that many people don't, myself included. So having the support and structure built into, this community, and if not this community, I know there's the vision that anyone finds a community where they can land and expand and be able to connect those dots. That's really where there's so much power. And if not this community, see that we exist and find one. I know that your heart, Michelle, and just knowing about you and learning more about you through these weekly conversations is that you have such dedication that you want people to find and connect with what they need and who they need. And so the encouragement that gets to happen here, if nothing else, someone coming and being part of a conversation, this is for you. You get to have the encouragement and the belief breathed into you, and remember that there's possibilities beyond maybe what have been visible or accessed so far. And
yeah, the hopelessness, I think I like to, I don't want anybody to ever feel like, I can't control that, but that there's not something out there that can be of help and support. And I just feel like going after some of these modalities that were not downloaded as quickly in the medical world or even in our home lives can really open it up. And I've seen that over and over again now. There was something else I was going to say. I lost it. I was thinking, I think what came to mind also was like darkness, people's darkness, and people feeling stuck. And as part of my mission has been helping people find the light in whatever capacity and finding the resources. So one of the things that's been, now I'm remembering, one of the things that's been happening more and more is that this can be very overwhelming, just like in the medical world. Like, what doctors do I see? I've got a addiction problem. Where do I go? Where do I start? Families kind of come to me. Is I can help people come up with creative healing plans. So if they're like, I don't know where do I go? You've got like 50 million resources on your podcast, Michelle. Which one do you think is best for me? I'm happy to kind of flush through what might be a good starter point, and then kind of go from there, because it can be very overwhelming to know what is what. Mm-hmm. Well, this has been fun, guys.
Everything was in person and coffee.
Yeah, I was flushing through some of this with my friend Christine on our walk this morning, and I'm really grateful to her and all of her skepticism and all the things, because it's just it helps me understand things in all different levels. And it's not for everybody. Like, I'm not trying to push, I don't have an agenda. I'm not partnering with all these holistic healers. I'm just here to help people with their suffering and find creative ways for us all to kind of get through life with more peace and love.
And
Mhm.
yeah, thanks for sharing. Like, that's what success looks like to you. Because I think in the back of each of our heads, we always have like, well, what's success in that realm? And what's success? What do you want people to walk away with when they listen to your podcast? So personally for you, after you've had this 9 months, almost a year of having all of these webinars and interactions and podcasts, what does success feel like to you with the podcast, like emotionally? I'm just curious.
Um, it's a good question. Well, I always feel giddy after I get to speak to a creative healer that is able to articulate really clearly the support that they can offer. Like that gets me really excited. Because I think sometimes, even in the medical world, we're not able to articulate ourselves very well and how we can best support people. So I think that's an important element to get out. That is the first step for anybody to be able to connect to the right healer. Um, I think the notion of opening up the door to somebody that might be listening that is feeling, I think that word hopeless kind of came to me. Like, oh my God, I've tried everything. What are you doing? Like, what's going on? Or the skeptical medical person that listens in and starts kind of scratching their head going, well, maybe I'll try that for myself. Or the burnt out worker that listens in and says, well, maybe I'll try that for myself. That is like, that fills my heart. And that's like a win for me. Any kind of education to the public about finding finding more peace and love. That's really, isn't that what we all want? We all want to have, I mean, suffering is inevitable because we're all in the same boat as humans. Like we can't avoid that, but being able to not get tackled by it is kind of the game, and having the support and that there are resources that we can or community to turn to during those dark times is really what's so important. And it's not always about talking about it. Like we don't, I think the therapy world, it's all about talking through. And yes, we do need to. And sometimes there's no words because there's just some traumatic things that happen and we need other things than just words
Mm-hmm.
to be able to get through. I think I answered the question. Yeah.
Yeah, you did.
For anybody listening who wants to connect more, we've got episodes every week and all sorts of opportunities to connect locally in Kansas, Missouri, in Los Angeles, virtually. I know, Michelle, you've got lots of things launching now. So fall of 2025, including Half Hour Haven, midweek opportunity to meditate, be guided and held to reset. And that's available. You'll get all the information. You can go to the Hirschman Clinical Services website, find us online, getting much more, have been more vocal and consistent in sharing so that all of you listening and seeking know where you can find community. So we'll have more episodes like this, I'm sure. There's been requests to have repeat episodes, and I know you'll be one of them.
Thank you, Darcy.
I have just one final thought, and thank you to Michelle, just that, healing doesn't always happen behind those closed doors, right? And it takes someone like you, Michelle, with compassion, clarity, conviction to make connections for people, and especially outside of the four walls of a therapy room. And so I just want to say I'm proud of you, and being willing to take the risk, because it is a risk adventure.
Mhm.
And so I'm proud of you for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. I appreciate you ladies so much. So grateful to be able to voice this with the both of you today. What a gift. Thank you.